Greetings all, Ben here from East West. This is going to be part 5 of our series on how to build a little charting application using Python. So let's just jump into the code. So in this part, I'm just going to bring in some date options, so that the start date and the end date, so that we can customize what date range we want to import the charts over. So to do that, we're just going to have to import a couple of libraries to start off with here. So we're going to import datetime, and we're also going to import from TK Calendar, we're going to import date entry. So they should be pretty straightforward. You shouldn't have to install anything there. They should just be able to be automatically imported. So we just run this cell and that should be fine. So just make sure you run the cell so that the libraries are actually imported. So what we're going to do next now is we'll just come down here to the main window to begin with. Now remember, with the main window, the order in which we create these widgets, the orders of which it shows up within the frame. So you can see here we've got the fetch and display chart button and the exit button. So to me, it's logic that they would be at the bottom. And as we look above, we've got the create the entry widget for the stock symbol. So to me, the next logical thing to do after you choose the stock symbol is to choose the start date and the end date of the stock that you want to download. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I just want to give the widget a default start date, because if we don't give it a default start date, it'll default to today's date, and then you'll be trying to download 1 day's worth of data, which is a bit useless. So that's why we're going to use date time here that we imported to just calculate a standard window back for downloading the data. So I'm going to do that by just declaring this variable default start date, and then we're just going to use the date time. We're just going to take today, and we're going to take 365 days off today, and that is what is going to populate our start date widget as a default date. So what we'll do first here is we'll just create a label. So exactly the same way as we created a label here, we're going to create a label that just says select the start date, and we'll just use the pack line to declare the spacing. So that's pretty straightforward. Now the next few lines of code we're going to bring in here, we're just going to bring in the start date entry. So that equals date entry. So that we're now calling this is what we've imported, date entry. So we're going to say date entry. So we're going to put that in the frame. We'll give it a width of 12, which is just a bit of a default. Actually, all these settings are quite default. Background dark blue, foreground white, border width 2. So you could play with any of these, whichever way you like. I mean, have a play around with them, see what it looks like. You might want to change the look of what you're creating. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go start date entry dot set date. So we're just setting the date, and we're going to use the default start date, which is what we declared up here. So this window will be populated with a date 365 days back from today's date. And then we will use the entry, the pack line to just do the spacing as per everything else that we've done. So next we're just going to do the end date. So the end date will be exactly the same. We'll just create a label and we'll just give it the pack spacing like that. And then we're just going to bring in another date entry window. We're going to use all the same defaults as we did above for the start date. And we'll just give it that the spacing. The only thing we haven't done here is we haven't declared a default start. We haven't declared a default end date because we just want today's date, and today's date will automatically be the default end date. Will be the automatic default date that goes into these windows, so we don't need to do anything there. Okay, so that is what I'll just do here is just tidy that up a little bit, because this window is going to get pretty big. So I'm just trying to keep it a little bit organized with headings and the spacing, keep it a little bit under control. So that is it for the main window. So now we just need to come up here to the functions window, and we just need to make a little change here. And specifically, we just need to change how we're downloading the data, because now we have a start date and an end date. So this is just pretty simple, right? We don't want to declare that as the start date. So what we can do here is we have declared, pardon me, just wait 1 second here. Sorry, what we actually have to do, we do have to say start date equals start date and end equals end date, okay? But of course we need to actually declare these first. All right. So what we will do here is we'll just put in a little line of code here. So I'll just give this the heading. I'm just going to bring in this little heading, define start and end dates, because obviously we need a start date and end date. So look, I think this step might actually end up in a different function, but I'll just keep it in this function for the time being. I might shift it in a future video. So what I'm going to have to do is simply bring in these two lines of code. I'm just going to say start date equals start date entry dot get date. So, remember down here we did the start date entry, we did the start date entry here, start date entry. So we're just saying get. So it's the same way, we did the same thing, where did we do the same thing? We used this get function previously here, symbol entry dot get. So all we're doing is we're getting whatever was in our start windows, we're just getting those things. And then we're just putting them into the variable start date, and we're doing the same thing with the end date. So whichever dates are in the entry windows, we're going to create those as being variables. Then we're going to pass the start date and the end date as our date range for when we download the chart. So that's all it is. It's not really anything complex. Like I said, I think I might move this to a different function down the line, but let's just leave it as this for now. So I think what we can do now is we can just probably run this and see what we come up with. So I'm just going to restart and run all. Okay, and I'll just shrink this down so you can see it. So here is my window. So I'm just going to put in Apple, and we've just fetched. You can see here now we've got the select start date and select end date. Okay, so when we arrow down, then we get this nice little menu. So, like those dark blues and all that sort of stuff, the width, that's all the stuff you can play with, right? But what this has done is today's date is the 10th of June 2024, and this is defaulted back to the 11th of June 2023. So we can change this to whichever we want. We can go back a year. We can go back a lot longer if we want, if we fetch this chart. Okay, so this is the chart that it's brought up. Okay, so we can also, of course, change the date to something a little bit sooner and fetch that chart, and that will bring up a different series of numbers, of course, because now we're defining the range. Sorry, I was stumbling along here because there is. I'll just exit this. You might see this. This is what happens with NPL Finance. You are plotting so much data that it maybe you can't see the details. Okay, so you could set it to line, and then it won't bring up this. But remember, the way that we're sort of running this, I'm going to just rerun this cell. You won't even see it if you're doing that, because it's a full screen application. So that is something to be aware of. But because what it's just saying is that you can see all the open, high, low closes here, like so. But if you went and did a bigger chart, did that work? No, it did not, because I've selected the end date. So hang on, let's reset this. Pardon me. So it's only telling you that it's difficult to see the open, high, low closes of the bars here, whereas when we make this a lot, closer in, we can see more detail. So that's all it is. It's just a visual warning. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So look, I think here we've just expanded our little toolbar. We've just brought in the start date and the end date. We've seen how to do that. So I think in the next video we'll start building on some more stuff. We'll bring in some more stuff to our toolbar, and we'll expand the usability of all this. So that's it for here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye for now.